Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Toth. I'm a domain specialist for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Observability and Management. Today, we're going to have a quick look at how to enable and the capabilities of OCI Operations Insights. Operations Insights lets you use the cloud as a historical archive for resource and performance data about your host, databases, Exadata systems, whether they run in the cloud or on premises. With this archive that can store data up to 2 years, you can see and work with long-running historical trends and extract insights using machine learning algorithms, insight that you otherwise wouldn't be able to see simply by looking at data spanning windows of about 8 days. First, let's have a look at how to actually enable operations insights for, in this case, your pluggable databases. So go to administration and then click on add databases. Now you have to select how your database is added. So if you have a cloud database, you can select cloud infrastructure. If you have your database as enterprise manager, you can create what's called OCI and EM bridges to essentially transfer all of those databases and discover them in Operations Insights. And finally, you can install what's called a management agent on your databases, whether they're in the cloud or on premises, and use this agent to connect and discover pluggable databases for Operations Insights. So for example, with cloud infrastructure, select autonomous or bare metal, virtual, and Exadata. Select that. And then around here, you have to select a database as well as the pluggable databases of interest. You can just discover all the pluggable databases. You have to select the appropriate service to connect to those pluggable databases, and you have to add the appropriate credentials for that connection. You could, for example, add DBS and MP, and you have to provide the password of the user to OCI Vault as a secret. Finally, you have to create what's called a private endpoint in Operations Insights. The private endpoint will represent the pluggable databases in the virtual cloud network related to them. Now, that was how to enable Operations Insights. Let's now talk about the capabilities. Now, there are two key areas that I want to talk about today. We've got capacity planning and we've got Oracle SQL Warehouse. Let's start with capacity planning. So capacity planning presents and analyzes long-running historical trends of resource usage for databases, hosts, and Exadata systems. And by resources, I mean things like CPU, storage, memory, for your databases and hosts. And using this information, we can see the current over and the current under utilization of resources. And using the historical knowledge that Operations Insights possesses regarding these matters, Operations Insights can also forecast over and under utilization that's predicted to happen within the next 30 or 90 days based on past trend behaviors. So this is the current situation of CPU utilization for databases. And then in the next 30 days, 11 of them are forecasted to reach high utilization, and 15 of them are projected to reach low utilization. This means that you can allocate resources or workloads if your databases are predicted to get problems with, for example, memory or CPU in the future. You can see here that based on the historical trends here, a prediction has been made regarding how close it's going to get to that dangerous red line, which actually shows the allocation of CPUs. The closer it is to the red line, the closer it will get to the red line in the future. The greater the danger is that it's not going to have the resources it needs for the workloads that it possesses. And again, we can see databases that are projected to reach high utilization within the next 30 days or within the next 90 days. And you can do that separately for different resources. So for CPU, storage, memory, IO. For hosts, you could do it for CPU and memory. And for Exadata systems, you could do it for, if we take this system here, you could do it for CPU, memory, IOPS, and Exadata storage. Overall, this is great insight to optimize consumption by making sure resources aren't wasted, by making sure that there's no current or future underutilization of resources, and to make sure that your databases, hosts, Exadata systems have enough resources right now and will have enough resources in the future. Capacity planning is about planning for and optimizing consumption of resources. Now, that was one part of Operations Insight. Let's talk to the second part, which is SQL Warehouse. Now, the SQL Warehouse is essentially performance analytics for your SQL queries in Oracle databases. Again, this is based on long-running historical trends. Operations Insights is a cloud storage. It's a cloud historical archive for performance data managed by Oracle. So based on long-running trends, you could see if a SQL query has degrading or varying, or you could say unstable performance. And by performance, I mean that the average response time is worse now than it was, for example, 6 months ago. And this way you can analyze how the SQL query, how much time the SQL query is spending on doing its job, and did it perform better before? If yes, that means that there might be a performance bottleneck that should be checked, which has increasingly been developing over the course of potentially months. So for queries marked for performance degradation, you can see various metrics for the query. Oh, first of all, here's an overview of the queries, and you can actually see it from two different angles. The color suggests change, and the size suggests the average response time. So if the square is big, that means it's a high average response time compared to the other SQL queries. If the color is a dark red, that means that the average response time has increased with more than 100%. If it's beige here, that means that there's no change, meaning the SQL query performs around the same now as it did before. And if it's green, that means that there's a positive change, meaning the SQL query is actually faster now than it was before. Now, if we click on a single SQL query, we could see various metrics for the query and details about the execution plan and the costs that different execution plans have for the performance of the SQL query. But maybe more interestingly, you can compare the performance of the SQL query across different execution plans and databases to see if there's a correlation. So for example, here, looking at that average response time, there's a very clear difference between this execution plan and this execution plan. The performance degradation clearly happens in correlation to this execution plan here. And you do something similar with databases. So if you click on databases, we can see databases using the SQL query, and you can see that the performance degradation are primarily impacting this database, where in other databases, the SQL query is relatively fast by comparison. So Operations Insights is a historical archive of performance and resource data in the cloud to optimize resource consumption of databases and hosts, Exadata systems, as well as to spot SQL query performance degradations, SQL query bottlenecks. That was all for me. Thank you very much for watching.